Feel my hands static.
What's up, primates? I'm Shane the Skeptic, and as always, I thank you for tuning in to watch my content on my channel. Today, I'm just going to be really just kind of chilling. I appreciate everybody bearing with me and I apologize for the fact that I tuned in late. I was going to get started at 11:30, but then I got high, so here I am. But if I lag, then anybody who would have otherwise been late actually gets here on time too. So because of the fact that some other people get late, there that's fine. Today I'm going to be giving somewhat of a lecture, I guess, really on just logic. I'm going to begin by going over probably just like 3 or 4 different types of logical fallacies. After covering logical fallacies, I will cover contraries, contradictories, subcontraries, and subalternation. After covering those, I will move on to modus ponens and modus tollens. Maybe I should start with modus ponens and modus tollens, actually. That's a little bit easier than, I don't know, I'll figure it out. I'm going to get started with the logical fallacies, though. So let me go ahead and just get those up here. Just going right from yourlogicalfallacies.com. Thou shalt not commit logical fallacies. Amen to that. I'm going to begin with middle ground, which is saying that a compromise or a middle point between 2 extremes must be the truth. Now, to be clear, this isn't saying that it's always fallacious anytime somebody arrives at the conclusion that something was that the answer was something in the middle, or if they say that they think the answer is probably somewhere between 2 extremes. But rather, the fallacy is to say that somebody's saying that because something is in the middle of 2 extremes and it's as in the middle as it could be, that it's therefore, the correct answer. This website's weird. Okay, whatever. I had a few in mind, so I'm kind of annoyed that how this website works right now, but that's fine. It's a great website. Ad hominem, you attacked your opponent's character or personal traits in an attempt to undermine their argument. So in other words, the ad hominem is also another way of defining it is what I mean. The ad hominem is when you, instead of supporting your conclusion with, or let's say your rebuttal, by actually presenting a counter argument, you attack somebody's character or you make a personal attack in an effort to, make your argument. It's not to say that personal attacks are necessarily all therefore ad hominems. An ad hominem is a personal attack being used in place of a valid argument. Bandwagon, also known as the appeal to popularity. It says here, you appeal to popularity or the fact that many people do something as an attempted form of validation. Pretty obvious reason why this is fallacious is there was a time in which everyone in the world, if not at least the overwhelming majority of the people in the world, thought that the earth was flat. That was just the intuitive starting point before we had the knowledge that we have today. But the fact that everybody thought that didn't mean that it was therefore true. So the overwhelming majority of people can be and have been wrong. So, that's not undoable. Um, let's keep going here. Appeal to nature. You argued that just because something is natural, it is therefore valid, justified, inevitable, good, or ideal. There are a couple pretty good examples of this. I mean, if you go outside and you find a mushroom on the ground, and you have no idea what kind of mushroom it is, you just go pick a random mushroom on the ground. It may very well be natural, organic. It also might kill you even though it's completely natural. And then there are plenty of man-made substances, and by substances I don't mean drugs necessarily, but plenty of man-made things that are not only not bad for you, but are actually beneficial to you. Medicine is good for you. Medicine is synthetic. The fact that something is synthetic doesn't mean it's bad for you, and the fact that it's natural doesn't mean that it's good for you, but we as human beings, we're sort of these pattern seeking creatures, and we see a pattern between, with like food, for example. A lot of, if you think of natural foods, the first few foods that come to mind are going to be healthy foods. And then if you think of man made food, perhaps the first things you think of are not as healthy. So, because of the fact that you have examples where that's often the case, you just sort of arrive at this belief that if something's natural, it's therefore necessarily good for you. Burden of proof. Saying that the burden of proof lies not with the person making a claim, but with someone else to disprove it. If you're an atheist, you have inevitably encountered this one. There's just no way around it, right? Um, Somebody makes a claim and you're unconvinced of the claim. So you say, okay, how do you support this claim? And they say, well, you can't prove that it isn't the case. The problem of this is you could make up any completely ridiculous thing, and the other person can't entirely um, falsify it with absolute certainty. So, I say that unicorns exist, and you say, "Well, prove it." And I just go, "Well, no, you prove unicorns don't exist. Like you're not going to prove that unicorns don't exist." Um, so those are some logical fallacies. Pretty simple. Yeah, but to be completely honest with you guys, I'm a little bit more excited about this. I'm on the first slide still. Okay, I got a full screen to be able to read this. So, um, excuse me. Here we have what are called contradictories. Now, I made a video in the past where I covered what were called contradictories and contraries. And, so if you've seen that video, you're already, most of the way there with what I'm going to be going over, because I'm going to be going over contradictories, contraries, subcontraries, and subalternation. It sounds overwhelming, but, I'm high and relaxed and I'm talking about this. You got this. Um, So contradictories are sets of statements in which one must be true and the other one must be false. Another way of wording that, both cannot be true and both cannot be false. So if you look at this picture that I have up here, here we have four propositions that we're going to be working with for the sake of demonstrating these types of contradictions. So yeah, the first proposition, everything is B. The second one, something is B. The third, nothing is B. The fourth, something is not B. So these are four separate propositions, and we're going to explain the relationships that they could have between each other. So so if I say a number, obviously I'm referring to the proposition which is in the number. So if one is true, then four has to be false. So look at proposition one. Everything is B. Then we look at proposition four. Something is not B. It cannot be the case that everything is B if something is not B. One of those has to be true, and the other one has to be false. Um, the second example of it is just, the other way around. If something is not B, then it cannot be the case that everything is B. One has to be true. You know, one of those propositions, I mean, has to be true, and one of them has to be false. Here we have if two is true, then three has to be false. So if something is B, if it's true that something is B, then it cannot also be true that nothing is B. Those cannot both be true. Um, so then you have the other examples pictured there. You could read them yourselves as well. Um, you could always, especially if you're watching sometime after the stream, um, yeah, you could always just pause it and read them. Let me go back really quickly though. For contradictories, a really simple example that I gave is the two propositions. One of them being "I am dead," the other one being "I am alive." One of them has to be true. I have to be either dead or alive, but the truth of one entails the falsity of another. So that is as thoroughly as I can articulate that. I'm gonna check out the chat a little bit. Um, Let's see, what website was that? The website for the logical fallacies was called yourlogicalfallacyis.com. Okay, let's go to slide number 2. Contraries. Both cannot be true, however, they can both be false. So the simple example, I'll start with the simple one this time. I gave the example of one proposition being I am in Canada, the other proposition being I am in Africa. If one of those is true, the other has to be false, but they also can both be false. So they can't both be true, but they can both be false. Simple example here, 1 and 3 can both be false, but cannot be true. So 1, everything is B. 3, nothing is B. Those can both be false. Obviously, they cannot both be true. That one's pretty simple. Subcontraries. 2 and 4 can both be true, but they can not both be false. So the subcontraries are literally just contraries the other way around. So 2, something is B. 4, something is not B. You can do the math, right? And this one, to make it easier to read, if you're going to be somebody reading it, I would probably be the type of person if I was watching this after the live stream to pause it and read it. So if that's what you want to do, go ahead. I put lines in between the propositions to make it, or the sentences, to make it easier to differentiate where the sentences are. So subalternation, it's not really a type of contradiction. So I often refer to these as the 4 type of contradictions, and perhaps I'm mistaken in doing so because this isn't really a type of contradiction. But I've heard them referred to as the 4 types of contradictions, and I'm sort of reconsidering whether or not I should keep referring to them that way. Um, but just letting you guys know, it's more of a rule of logic, and the rule is you cannot universally generalize from an existential instantiation. And what that means is, for example, if 1 is true, then 2 must be true. So if everything is B, then something is B. Right. It's like 2 definitely follows from 1, right? So if 1 is true, 2 must be true. But the truth of 2 doesn't imply the truth of 1. So it doesn't work the other way around. That's why you'll notice in this case you have a one-way arrow, right? Um, if 3 is true, then 4 must be true, but the truth of 4 doesn't imply the truth of 3. So obviously just the other side. And furthermore, you cannot assert the truth of 3 from the truth of 4. So if nothing is B, then it's true that there is something that is not B, right? If nothing is B, here's an example of something, it's not B. Fucking lokes are not B. um, yeah, but just because lokes are not B doesn't mean nothing is B. So that is subalternation. So, um, as I said, it sounded overwhelming. I know you hear those 4 words: contraries, contradictories, subcontraries, subalternation. It's like, dude, I can't do this. But it's honestly quite simple. Let me see this. What do you say to those that are atheist but say other atheists still have the burden of proof, or or explaining for explaining their disbelief in God. Um, this might not be very satisfactory, but they're simply mistaken. They're simply wrong. They're just logically wrong. Um, now, if I don't believe something, and that's just because I'm not convinced of it. If I'm not convinced of it, it's because I don't find it plausible. A better articulation of that could be I have a standard of evidence that doesn't meet. And then if you want to have an epistemological conversation about what my standards of evidence are and the methods through which I arrive at beliefs, then we can get into that conversation. And most people aren't going to really go that far into it, right? Um, but yeah, they're just logically wrong. So mildly satisfactory. Good. That's the best I could do. Oh shit. Okay, sign gets mistaken for things. I don't mean any harm to anyone. I just fucking realized that's a. It started as people trolling, I think, and people took it over. So I would actually try to refrain from doing okay signs being mistaken. But I'm a Randy Marsh supporter, so I'm a good person. Let me go to modus ponens and modus tollens. These are just two simple rules of logic. If you take a philosophy class or a logic class, this is probably going to be modus ponens and modus tollens. I mean, I haven't taken a single class in college, so I'm speaking from like what I've heard and from like lectures that I've watched, because I have watched plenty of lecture series. Normally, some of the first lessons are going to begin with modus ponens and modus tollens, so those would be really helpful. Modus ponens is a rule of logic that states that if A, then B, A, therefore B. So, for example, if A equals I'm live streaming and B equals I have internet. If I'm live streaming, then I have internet. I'm live streaming, therefore I have internet. Me having internet logically follows from the fact that I'm live streaming, because me live streaming is dependent upon me having internet. So that one's pretty simple. Modus tollens is just really an extra step. So if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. That seems pretty simple, right? A equals B and B equals C, so A equals C. So here we have, if A is I'm conscious, B is to be conscious, one can't be dead, and C, I can't be dead. So if I am conscious and to be conscious, one can't be dead, then I can't be dead. So if the first two are true, if A and B are true, then C is necessarily true, because C is not a necessary truth in and of itself. A necessary truth is a truth that couldn't have been otherwise. So that I'm not dead is not in itself a necessary truth, because I could become dead as soon as I stop being alive. But so that is modus tollens. So to keep it simple, that is really the entirety of the lecture, if you will. So we went over a couple of logical fallacies, contraries, contradictories, subcontrary, subalternation, modus ponens, and modus tollens. Before I get going, I'm going to be playing a commercial that I made. And here it is.
This universe belongs to its creator, and his name is Jesus Christ, the God of the Bible. I'll simply be demonstrating that whatever Shane says, he's making up out of thin air, with all due respect. What makes you think I'm talking into a computer right now?
Or whatever streaming device.
What makes you think that I'm like, no, what makes you think that
because in order for you to be talking to me right now, you have to be using a streaming device.
How do you know that I'm talking to you right now?
Because I can hear you.
Have your senses ever deceived you before? The debate resolution asks pretty much a nonsensical question, much as if we were asking, can squares exist without lines or right angles? Or can water exist without wetness?
You're trying to make a sort of like proof ad absurdum. You're trying to show some absurd conclusion that my worldview leads to.
Yeah.
Okay. but my worldview doesn't lead to it. You're just saying that it does. That's why it's a straw man.
Well, then you need to answer some of the questions I brought up. I mean, you need to show me how you know that you're not a brain in a vat. Also, this is not a debate about whether God exists, as you know if you read the resolution carefully. That debate has been done so many times, and it has been won so many times by the Christians that, in my humble opinion, it is barely worth doing anymore.
My question to you is, do you require that a doctor be able to demonstrate that she isn't a brain in a vat to believe that she knows that someone has pneumonia?
I don't know that I have ever seen a doctor. I don't know. I don't know the external world exists or that my senses are reliable.
So if you haven't seen the debate and you want to go check it out, that was the debate. It was a really it was a frustrating experience, but you get to learn a lot from watching presuppositional apologetics get exposed. Not only because of the fact that it's about argumentation and you're seeing what's wrong with it, but just in explaining what's wrong with it, you're able to really just talk so much about epistemology, and so it provides an opportunity for a really educational conversation. Anyway, I wanna before I get going, I have mods now in the chat, moderators. So shout out to all the moderators. I don't remember everyone that I made one, and so I'll list you guys all next time. But so the channel's growing because now I have. Honestly, I don't think I've had any people that I really had problems with. I think it's really just been bots. But yeah, if you're watching the show, you're allowed to talk shit about me. I'm going to tell the moderators not to remove you if you talk shit about me, but don't talk shit about other people in the chat. That's not going to go. And don't be like bigoted and shit. Other than that, you can, roast me or whatever. Everybody. Oh, shout out to the patrons. Ree, I believe, just joined. So let me go ahead, and you have a new one. The Atheist Ree. Thank you very much, Ree. I also made you one of the moderators. So thanks for helping participate in my channel as well. I mean in more than one way. And also Anthony Magnabosco, and the third one is a friend of mine, but I still got to see if I don't know if he'd be okay with me saying his name on the stream, so I got to check that out with him. But I owe him the shout out if he does want one, so I will give it that. Everybody, stay safe. Take care.